Oh boy, my expectations were low and somehow Jurassic World Dominion still cratered them. This movie is bursting at the seams with idiotic plot points, so let's go chronologically and unpack all the devoid of logic aspects. Jurassic World Dominion opens with a news montage showing dinosaurs causing havoc throughout the world. From a premise standpoint, this is pretty cool and what fans have wanted, albeit you have to look over a big contrivance in that the government could easily hunt down these dinosaurs, especially the bigger ones, and it's quite surprising that the government is allowing them to threaten the lives of citizens.
This is fine.
Not to mention how massive of a disruption it'd be to the ecosystem, which in of itself would warrant an entire video analysis for just that subject alone. So as a whole, it'd be a lucrative program hiring elite hunters to take out the very dangerous carnivorous dinosaurs. That, I feel, would be the more logical follow-up movie to Fallen Kingdom, and it still makes sense to include Owen Grady as the lead, spearheading this team. But it doesn't seem like Colin Trevorrow, for whatever reason, wanted to do that, and we'll get to the locusts later. Claire and Zia break into a compound that's illegally breeding Nasutoceratops, and they have the intent of reporting them. They discover a baby who's sick and decide to extract it. While doing so, Franklin explodes through the gate with his white van, prompting the alarms to go off. This is comedically over the top because they already made a hole in the fence and all they had to do was make it bigger for the cage, but that's too boring. We gotta notify the guards so we can have an action scene. And even before going into that, it's of course silly that we establish that there are guards here, and they're not actually guarding the thing that they're supposed to be guarding. Anyways, our characters are making their getaway off-road in a white van while being pursued by off-road trucks. I'm not necessarily a car nut, but even I can see this Scooby-Doo van would immediately get surpassed and sideswiped. Instead, the security guards have to shoot out the tires because they physically can't keep up. And since Claire is a brilliant tactician, she decides to go full throttle into a herd of Nasutoceratops. Of course, the dinos don't target the vehicle that's out front and rushing them, but conveniently all the other cars. I guess the invulnerability incantations they casted in the last movie haven't worn off yet. Franklin and Zia rightfully tell Claire that she's off her rocker and to go hang out with Star-Lord. Cutting over to him, he's wrangling some parasaurs as if they're a pack of horses. This scene, I think, embodies really well the notion of forcing dinosaurs into a context that doesn't make sense. Colin Trevorrow wants Owen to lasso and tame a dinosaur like a horse to show how much of a badass he is, but just using a tiny fraction of your brain's processing power will reveal how ludicrous this scenario is. A parasaur weighs between 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. A horse weighs 1,000 in comparison. As Jaws has taught us, we're going to need a bigger horse. A much bigger horse.
You're gonna need a bigger boat, right?
So obviously this raises a question of how does Owen intend on actually capturing one of these? He'd flat out carry him off like a scrawny child playing tug of war with a bodybuilder, and Colin's only solution here is when Owen lassos the dino, it then drags him, which, pause? As an animal behaviorist, why the hell would you hold on? There's literally nothing you can do in this context, and you'd most definitely die or get gravely injured as you get dragged by this muscular sports car. Of course, the writers grace Owen with a random tree stump that he doesn't collide into, but wraps the rope around it and stops the dino in its tracks. Realistically, it'd probably have enough strength to rip that tree stump out of the ground, but regardless, the tree stump is strong enough and Owen remains to be a Chad. It's funny how his introductory scenes get progressively sillier throughout the trilogy. High five! While Claire is brewing up some plot armor incantations, Maisie comes back home and Colin Trevorrow establishes a point of conflict here that it's now widely known that Maisie Lockwood is a human clone. This was also briefly pointed out in the news montage. The puzzling thing here is this was a closely kept secret, and the last person that knew about it, Eli Mills, is dead. The only remaining people that know her secret are Henry, plus anyone he's told, and Owen and Claire. The writers don't label a source for how this got out to the public, and it comes off as them infusing an artificial conflict where Maisie's not allowed to leave the property. It's too dangerous, and these random hillbillies will obviously recognize you. So now we have to sit through this stereotypical relationship of forcing a rebellious teenager to stay home.
Besides, I'm not even a real person anyway.
What? You are the only you who ever was.
We cut over to Texas where there's some locusts eating wheat on a farm. These kids discover one and suddenly get mobbed by the world's slowest swarm of insects. This scene is going to of course be contrived because what needs to happen in the plot is these kids catch a locust so Ellie Sattler can study it later. This is achieved by the kids locking themselves into a barn, a hole is punctured allowing a singular locust to come in, but not any others somehow, and then the kids miraculously have enough time to grab a bucket and capture it. I don't know if these kids are on the same wavelength because the girl holding the shovel would have gone to town on the locust. Especially since they thought their lives were in danger. She had an easy kill shot, but that means we wouldn't have gotten the locust alive. So we have to bend the narrative into 3 loops to achieve the plot point we want. Ellie Sattler arrives and we learn that Biosyn crops are unaffected by the locusts.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Going over to Utah, Ellie Sattler brings Alan Grant the locust and is basically like Nick Fury in this scene. She wants him to come with her on an adventure because she needs a reputable witness while taking down Biosyn. It's a little odd she's going to Alan because he's a paleontologist. She doesn't actively need his skill set on the surface, and this is seemingly insinuating that she has no other close friends or colleagues that she can turn to.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Brother just wants to dig up dinosaur bones in peace, but whatever. She comes to Alan to rekindle their friendship. So how are we going to get Ian Malcolm into this Avengers ensemble? Well, he's just randomly working for Biosyn as their quote-unquote in-house philosopher. Yeah, it seems like the writers were struggling to include him, so he just happened to be working at the place where our characters were heading. And on top of that, he invites them there as well. Because obviously our characters committing espionage and infiltrating one of the biggest corporations would be even too ludicrous for Jurassic World. Going back to Owen's plotline, Maisie has an encounter with Blue's baby. This immediately triggered a question within me of how did Blue find or come across Owen again? They parted ways in the last movie and we see Blue peering over a suburban neighborhood. To try to answer this question, let's look at the Jurassic Wiki, and here it says, the Lockwood estate is nearby Oric, California, whereas Owen's cabin is somewhere in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Assuming it's as close as possible to Oric while being within that range, that means he could live around the city of Westwood, which is almost 300 miles away from Oric, and that would be a 5-hour drive. You may label this as nitpicking, but this is just where the movies have these locations. I don't know why you wouldn't make them closer together to avoid any confusion here. Anyways, Maisie has a cute interaction with Blue's baby called Beta, and I'm not sure why it's so docile and friendly. You'd think this predator that's being raised to hunt prey wouldn't act this way. It didn't grow up in the same environment as Blue. And then turning our attention towards Maisie, why the hell would you approach a baby velociraptor? Not only would that be incredibly dangerous, but I guess Owen, the animal behaviorist, has never told Maisie that if you find a baby animal such as this, then their parents should be close by. This would be like trying to approach a baby bear and then subsequently getting mauled by its mother. Maybe Blue has been around prior to this, so this is a normal encounter? Who knows? Blue of course shows up, and Owen also casually teleports in next to Maisie. His plot senses were tingling. It's funny how they always try to play up the suspense here, but we know that if you raise your hand to a dinosaur, that makes you invulnerable. While this is happening, some mysterious antagonists have been stalking Owen and discover that Maisie is here and also Blue. They pick this exact moment to enact their kidnapping scheme, instead of realistically waiting for Owen or even Claire to not be present. They, I also guess prior, set up a trap with a dead fox that Beta triggers, and they are also close enough to run over Blue in this instance. At the same time that goes down, Maisie spontaneously decides to stick it to Claire and leaves and thus gets captured. The timing for all of these events of Maisie leaving, capturing Beta, and pacifying Blue is a convoluted mess, and trying to make any logical sense out of this scene would be like untangling a massive pile of wires. Owen, since he needs to visually see Maisie get kidnapped for the plot to function, randomly runs out to the cliff overlooking the bridge to see that happen. Cool, I saw that. Time to go back home and get my things now. Owen and Clara end up going to Franklin, who is conveniently and suddenly working at the CIA. I only got the impression that a few days have gone by since the beginning of the movie where he was just unemployed. It seems like the writers had no idea how Owen and Claire would track down this poacher, so they needed the CIA or someone with that kind of skill set. Franklin here gives them the identity of the poacher in question, and I'm not really sure what Owen gives them to find this guy. I actually looked at the extended edition to see if this aspect was fleshed out in that version, and apparently they cut out an entire confrontation Owen has with the poacher. This also explains what happened to the Parasaur, where the poachers have a showdown with Owen and his government associates. Quite puzzling why they cut this, and maybe they did so because we can't have our macho main character submitting to the bad guys so early. Going back over to Franklin, expecting him to hand out this information is crazy, because this poacher is embroiled with an underground black market ring that's trading dinosaurs, and the CIA has an undercover operation going on there. Franklin is handing over material that wouldn't just get him fired, he'd go to jail. This is classified information that he's casually revealing in public after just landing this job. And I don't even know how Franklin would have access to this, let alone taking sensitive material out of the office and not getting caught. Those types of buildings are like hawks when it comes to that. You don't want employees leaking or selling classified information. So yeah, the writers forego logic at a fundamental level here.
Even on a good day, you and logic are...
And even betray Franklin's character, where he just willfully helps them without acknowledging the dire consequences that are right around the corner.
Promise me you won't go in there with your vest and mess everything up.
Why would I do that?
Also, another crazy side note here is the CIA is aware of this locust epidemic being on the brink of causing nationwide famine that could result in the deaths of millions, and they seem perfectly fine with it, basically playing it off as a joke. Alrighty, since we're approaching the end of Act 1, I find it weird that the lauded and hyped up point of releasing dinosaurs into the world isn't really utilized in the premise plot-wise. The dinosaurs being around is more or less set dressing, as one plot is getting Maisie back, and the other is investigating this locust mystery. Just wanted to point out this baffling direction Colin Trevorrow is taking the story. Flipping the plot pancake back over to Alan and Ellie, Biosyn gives them a tour of their nature reserve for dinosaurs in the Dolomite Mountains in Italy. Kind of funny seeing how Rebirth completely backtracks on this, and states that dinosaurs can't live in colder conditions, despite this reserve being around for years. Not sure if that means all of these dinosaurs end up dying, but ignoring Rebirth as one should always do, we get to the Biosyn compound and Ian Malcolm has his own auditorium where he gives philosophical contrarian lectures. Not sure what these top-of-the-line scientists are really getting out of this, and it's especially weird that Biosyn is bankrolling Ian Malcolm since he completely opposes all of the company's ideals. He's just so awkwardly and jarringly duct taped to this movie's plot, and he not only is here for nostalgia, but to also give Alan and Ellie a golden ticket into Willy Wonka's factory.
He slid into my DMs.
So Ian Malcolm, while swaggering about, gives Ellie his bracelet that allows him to buy coffee, and I guess also accesses the sub-level restricted areas. Why Biosyn would give this man who only delivers lectures that kind of unrestricted access is pretty wild, and as always, this happens because this is yet another plot bottleneck. Our characters are just handed the solution on a silver platter without having to do anything. It was already a massive stretch in Ian Malcolm being here, let alone having this magical bracelet to grant the protagonists the means of accessing what they want. Over in the sublevels, Lewis Dodgson, who looks exactly like Tim Cook, is talking to Henry Wu about the Locust Conundrum casually brewing a calamity event in the background. His villain monologue is completely warbled and confusing, and he flat out contradicts himself in this same scene. Henry cautions Tim Cook that they need to eradicate the locust, but Tim says no. His two reasons being, doing so will somehow cause a panic, as if leaving them alive to eat the world's crop supply won't cause a panic, and he also states that it gives them control. He doesn't really elaborate on that, and the only thing I think he's referring to is that Biosyn seeds aren't targeted by the locusts. However, worldwide governments would immediately figure out who the culprit is. You're just blatantly taking out your competition in broad daylight. Ellie Sattler figures out it's Biosyn in less than a minute. then the Locust plot is actually just a random side project because their main goal is obtaining Maisie, which makes the Locust plot even more confusing because Tim Cook admits that the Locust could lead the government to cracking down on Biosyn, thus compromising his stated objective, but simultaneously, he refuses to kill the Locusts. So now it becomes even more blatant how forced the presence of Alan, Ellie, and Ian are, because they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the existence of the Locusts. The writers had to perfectly concoct two unrelated plotlines to get everyone together to sell this movie. Owen and Claire are taken on a whimsical field trip to a Malta black market ring dealing in dinosaurs.
You can listen in, but promise me you will not make contact.
No.
While there, Claire runs into a pilot named Kayla who smuggles dinos around the globe, and Claire unconditionally trusts her because she's American.
It's Americans.
This happens within the first minute of them arriving, and Claire immediately divulging all of this information to the first person she interacts with is insanely reckless. Given this setting, you have to assume that everyone here is shady to some degree, potentially aiding and working with the people that kidnapped Maisie.
If you mess with the wrong person down here, you disappear. You feel me?
Claire is astronomically more likely to alert a bad guy instead of getting lucky and happening to talk to the one person here that saw Maisie and isn't morally washed. So even Claire and Owen are getting the supreme silver platter treatment like Alan and Ellie. Owen suddenly teleports away to a rooftop with his CIA operative buddy, and I guess they leave Claire at the black market as if it's a daycare drop-off. Quite odd, but
Anyway, last week...
The evil poacher arrives and Claire starts to follow him. Why would Claire be doing this and not someone working for the CIA would be a rational question, but you're not allowed to have those for these types of movies. He leads Claire to a meeting with Santos, who works for Tim Cook, and it turns out that Maisie isn't here. Instead, she's handing off vicious Atrociraptors that seek laser-painted targets. As if the Fallen Kingdom mechanic wasn't dumb enough, Colin Trevorrow shockingly doubles down on it. And this only happens because this will most definitely be used on Owen in the next 5 minutes. After showing the money, the CIA comes in for the arrest. However, they approach from one alleyway and apparently haven't secured the perimeter, which should be basic operating procedure for a sting like this, allowing for a weird shootout to ensue and the bad guys simply get away. Thankfully though, the CIA have an ace up their sleeve because they have Jason Bourne, Owen Grady, to run after the poacher. During the chase, the poacher shoots the locks to the cages of two larger dinosaurs. Owen naturally hits them with a classic hand gesture that grants him immunity and promptly rolls away. He then tackles the poacher and they have a little brawl in the dinosaur fighting pit. This scene is just so odd because there's two big dinosaurs out and about eating people, and there's an active rowdy crowd enjoying this fight. This is quite a tonal whiplash where this general atmosphere resembles more of an absurdist comedy, and after this, Owen allows the poacher to be gruesomely eaten alive. This should be a pretty major and dark character moment, but it's blanketed in the outrageous tone of the scene, completely nullifying the weight of this moment, and elicits a response of, "Oh, okay, that just happened." The truck carrying the Atrociraptors crashes and Santos, the evil lady from before, releases the dinos. Santos also points her laser at the 4 CIA agents, and instead of immediately gunning her down, they gawk at her and run away. This now prompts Claire to chase after her, and they eventually get into a catfight. Now, you'd immediately think this would be a death sentence for Claire. Someone who doesn't have any combat training that we know of is going up against someone who's presumed to be dangerous and has a weapon. Hell, Santos had a very clear killing blow opportunity on Claire when she threw her into the window and could have shanked her in the back. Obviously though, the plot demands Claire to win this fight, and the dino taser she picked up earlier has enough voltage to launch Santos across the room. To which Santos says,
You don't use it on people.
I find this hysterical because, I'm sorry ma'am, this is a life or death situation. Why are you nitpicking what weapon your opponent is wielding to defend their life? That's something children say on a playground.
Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Also for context, that fight lasted 10 seconds by the way. After telling Claire that Maisie is on her way to Biosyn, one of the Atrociraptors randomly shows up in the apartment building they're in. I guess this could be plausible due to the dinosaur's heightened sense of smell, but the timing of this is undoubtedly immaculate. And now, it also makes sense why they gave Claire a dinosaur taser so she doesn't immediately die here. This now triggers an absurd chase where after jumping onto the roof, Claire somehow outruns the raptor that's literally a couple feet behind her. We go from one shot of the raptor being on the cusp of biting her, and then there's 3 straight seconds of Claire sprinting, which implies that Claire is faster than a raptor. Given that she outran a T-Rex in high heels in the first movie that was on her ass, I guess this raptor doesn't stand a chance because she's wearing normal footwear. Maybe that makes her the Flash now. On top of this, Claire does some scuffed parkour, and before she dies, we cut away to someone else. Dinosaurs hate that one simple trick. When we cut back to her, we actually do the Jason Bourne ultimatum jump, which honestly, I respect it. This movie is going full-blown into parody realm, and on one hand, that could be enjoyable, but the movie is so poorly written, paced, and edited to the point that it's really hard to derive any satisfaction out of this pile of dino feces. Since Claire failed her Jason Bourne jump and the Atrociraptor succeeded it, she's now hanging from the railing. The writers at this point hit us with a wombo combo of crazy coincidences. So, for whatever reason, Kayla, the pilot from earlier, just happened to be here, in this vast and dense city, and on top of that, there's a cushy roofed car under Claire that breaks her fall. Kayla then gets into the driver's seat and takes off. Is this her car? Which I doubt because it seems like a company vehicle. How did she start it without the keys? It doesn't even show her starting the car. She just gets in and hits the acceleration. What is even happening right now?
Hold on tight. What?
I think I need like 10 shots of vodka to mask how bad the writing is. Cutting back over to Owen and his pal Barry, they both hit the Atrociraptor with a palm handout gesture. In this context, as established by the writers 6 minutes ago, once the laser marks a target, Atrociraptors will stop at nothing to kill their prey. So the writers are clearly breaking their own rule that they just set up so that Owen and Barry don't die. Like, could we come up with a creative solution for once that highlights Owen's intelligence as an animal behaviorist? How can you have fun with this movie when it's this unabashedly lazy when faced with any form of conflict? It's the same solution. It's so uncreative and lackluster, completely undercutting the tension and danger that these dinosaurs should pose. Like, in Jurassic Park, you actually felt scared of the dinosaurs, and the characters came up with tangible and clever solutions to get away from them, while here, the raptor waits until Barry is standing in front of a cage and misses him when he dives out of the way, locking itself inside. Then, randomly after this, as if this movie is a sporadic fever dream, Santos wanders into the set as if she's lost and gets arrested. I just don't even know what to say to that. Unfortunately, things get even more confusing from here, where, while arresting Santos, she paints Owen with the laser and a random Atrociraptor comes out of nowhere. Which isn't an exaggeration, it just manifests itself in this scene despite it not being around prior, as it would have obviously killed Owen and Barry while trying to capture the last one. Then, while driving out on his dirt bike, another Atrociraptor spawns in next to Owen. Like, this laser isn't mentioned to send out audio frequency. The dinosaur has to visually see the laser and then they hunt their targets. Even the first one wasn't there to see it. So both of these dinosaurs coming in has the vibes of the director not caring about any form of continuity or in-world logic and just wants a brainless action scene. And the action in question is so sterile. It's just Owen driving a motorcycle and the Atrociraptors are barely on the cusp of biting him multiple times. I could nitpick every single moment here, but that happens, and I'm not exaggerating, 19 times. After a certain point, these close calls utterly lose their effect at this frequency, and Owen isn't even doing anything to really counter the Atrociraptors. Along with every time we cut away from Owen, the raptors are on the precipice of catching him, and then when we cut back, they're suddenly farther away. And then you repeat that process like 8 times, and that's the entire scene. Some other highlights here are the complete lack of traffic in some of these streets. The city being congested wouldn't allow for a chase scene, but hey, let's just delete that aspect to have fun with our toys. Owen eventually gets to a point where he runs into the bigger released dinosaurs from earlier, and the people around them are acting like the dinosaurs just abruptly appeared. How are people this close to them and have not reacted prior? Why is there a random NPC on a scooter moving towards these dinosaurs? Then, for some more general questions, how does Owen know exactly where to go to get to this airfield? He's beaming around the city as if he grew up here. Where are the authorities? There's released dinosaurs wreaking havoc and there's none to be seen. At this point, I don't even think getting absolutely shit-faced drunk will mask how bad the writing is. If he had to take a shot every time Star-Lord held up his hand to a dinosaur, you'd have to get admitted to a hospital for liver failure. Owen eventually catches up to the plane while it's taking off, and before getting in, this Atrociraptor is about to kill Owen, but it unfortunately hits his force field and topples over. After getting into the plane, the dirt bike that launched into the cargo bay ends up wiping out the last remaining raptor as it stood idly in the opening screaming at Claire. Now, this is a good example of luck saving a hero. It's cause and effect. The characters interacting with their surroundings, and that ends up benefiting them in an unforeseen way. On the flip side, and how the creators have been using luck regularly prior to this, the raptors bumble around like clowns and are incapable of killing Owen. Oh, did I mention that these have been bred to kill for their entire lives? Whatever. One other aspect here that hasn't really been explored and feels rather convenient is Kayla being ride or die with our characters now. It was shown to us that she was put off by the whole child trafficking thing earlier, but even when confronted by Claire, she still turned her away. However, now, she's putting her life in extremely dangerous situations for these people she met like 10 minutes ago. Talk about rushed character development, or I should say non-existent character development.
You willing to risk your life for people you never met?
Shh, Owen, that's my job to question the writing. Of course though, she doesn't answer that yet because we all know why she's helping them, and that's because the writers are holding her family hostage. Ramsey, the person acting as the tour guide for Alan and Ellie, decides to step out, and this gives our characters the opportunity to access the sublevels. Ramsey's actions here are explained later, but wouldn't the people at the entrance of the sublevel stop these famous and renowned figures from going somewhere they're not supposed to be? They just walk in with no opposition as they're about to steal some of the most sensitive and valuable information on the planet. So once again, the writers are allergic to conflict and actively try to remove it in every scene, and if it does show up, then our characters sleepwalk through it. Alan Grant looks like he needs to shit really bad. Naturally, the sublevels are completely barren of any human life.
There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Following the pattern of the writers perfectly concocting situations for the characters to succeed. They wouldn't be able to achieve this espionage with scientist presence, so let's just delete them. During this time, Henry Wu and Maisie Lockwood have a casual conversation, and we learn here that Maisie isn't just a clone, but her mother was able to take her own DNA and thus give birth to Maisie. In addition to that, Maisie's mom was able to alter Maisie's DNA after the fact and cure a genetic disorder, which is actually why everyone wants Maisie. A little bit later when Henry talks to Tim Cook, all Maisie has to do to escape is pick up a bracelet that's been left out on the table next to her, and Beta also happens to be in this room by the way, and they both escape. Leaving a key next to your prisoner is such a comically massive oversight, and these are supposed to be some of the smartest human beings on the planet. After getting out, Tim Cook hits the alarm and they chase after Maisie. She walks into a room that has an open shaft with wires that she uses to descend down to the next floor. Okay, and Beta wanders off. It shouldn't be that hard to catch the baby because you need the wristband to open the doors, but I'll bet $100 that it starts teleporting around. Maisie finds Alan and Ellie getting mobbed by locusts because of the alarm, and I'm a bit surprised she approaches these people, because from her perspective, it should be assumed that anyone in that uniform would work for Biosyn and she should stay away. That is applying too much thought here, and she eventually recognizes them. Why does no one work here? Owen, Claire, and Kayla fly to Biosyn with the plan to check notes, ask to land at their airstrip, and hope they say yes. What's plan B? We don't need those with the writers we have. Tim Cook disables the aerial deterrent system, and the gang is subsequently taken down by Quetzalcoatlus. For a bafflingly confusing reason, Owen insists for Claire to take the only ejector seat with a parachute. Which, one, splitting up in a context of crash landing in dinosaur-infested land would be detrimental. That on its own would most definitely result in the death of Claire, and two, there's a bunch of flying dinosaurs swarming the plane. Would they not do the same to Claire when she parachutes down? The fact that not the animal behaviorist or the aviator point this out and gleefully send Claire to her death is probably the most jarring moment in this franchise. So, unsurprisingly, the flying dinos tear up her parachute and somehow aren't able to hit or eat Claire, who isn't even moving that fast relative to the plane that was just taken down. Like Malta, the dinosaurs are conveniently brushing off characters as if they're wearing personal shields from Dune. Then, since the parachute is in shambles, Claire falls to her death and dies. Back over at Biosyn, Ramsey discovers Alan and the gang while trying to escape, and it's revealed that he's on their side. I thought the twist here was going to be him working for the CIA while undercover, because they showed their awareness towards the locust earlier in the movie. But I guess the CIA is a-okay with a brewing global catastrophe. Surely the ending will include them in some way, right? Also, Tim Cook's security specialist shows him the security feed of Alan and Ellie stealing a sample from the locust, but he does this 12 minutes after it happened. Conveniently long enough for the protagonist to get on the transport and not immediately be seized coming out of the room. The fact that this highly advanced compound doesn't have someone actively watching security cameras is really surprising. Although, most movies tend to fall apart logically when you remember that security cameras are kind of a thing. So Tim Cook now opts to shut down the underground transport, which happens to stop the group of characters by a cave system, and there are spooky creatures present. Claire gets resurrected by the writers and wakes up hanging from a tree while she's still attached to her seat. While trying to unbuckle, a Therizinosaurus shows up and it seemingly has cataracts and is partially blind. Extremely convenient for Claire here, and then she wipes this miracle on her ass like toilet paper by unbuckling her seatbelt and falling to the ground. Like, why would you do that? Why not wait for it to leave? You're clearly going to alert the dinosaur and oh wow, it's now alerted to your presence. While she's crawling away, the dinosaur looms over Claire, basically stalking its prey, and never actually goes in for the kill. You can argue that, well, it's blind, despite just killing the deer earlier within a few seconds. This should clearly establish that if Claire gets caught, she'll die. Very simple rules. So the fact that the writers then immediately break those rules blatantly shows how false the suspense is. Claire then outsmarts the dinosaur by simply crawling into water and submerging herself. Like, what? To which the dinosaur thinks she vanishes and leaves.
That's it?
I think these writers are having a really hard time coming up with tangible and exciting dinosaur encounters that don't blatantly break the internal logic of the film. Owen and Kayla unsurprisingly survive the airplane crash and run into a Pyroraptor while trying to get off the ice. Since the ice starts to crack, the Pyroraptor chooses to go under the water and waits for the characters to fall through. And he's dead. Instead of getting a free meal, the raptor decides to circle Owen, perfectly giving him enough time to escape. The characters sit on the ice panting like, phew, that was a close one. But the issue here is the Pyroraptor is still a threat. And wow, shocker, it erupts from the ice and pursues them. And once again, the raptor ignores the easy kill option and gives our characters a very considerate 8-second head start to run away. What it does in the meantime is shake off water from its feathers because being wet is no bueno. Because of this, Owen and Kayla are able to get to an elevator just in the nick of time. Some time passes and they discover Claire's parachute. Why they forced her out of the plane, you may ask? Yeah, I really don't know why. Maybe they thought their odds of surviving the plane crash were very minimal, so faring against flying dinosaurs in a parachute and yeeting Claire into dinosaur-infested land would somehow be better odds of survival. Regardless, they now have to track down Claire and they briefly run into the Giganotosaurus. While wandering around in the caves, Alan, Ellie, and Maisie run into some Dimetrodons. I try not to overly nitpick in these videos, despite this video being very long, but I'd be lying if this moment didn't make my entire body recoil. Falling that far at that age, back first onto a rocky surface would really mess up your back. I'm sorry. However, since Alan has the body of an athletic 20-year-old, he brushes this off like it's nothing, and before running away, he insists on getting his hat back, as if he's Indiana Jones or something. Although, overall so far, it seems like the writers are making a lot of pop culture references. Like, there was also a Shining reference when the Atrociraptor started chasing Claire. At the end of this scene, the gang gets to a closed gate that can only be opened from the outside. Not sure why it was designed that way, but that's just what the writers established for the sake of conflict. Ian Malcolm miraculously shows up, and it was set up that he was coming here, so this is plausible at least. But there's another compounding coincidence where Marcus happens to check the security feed at this exact time, inputting the code for the door and saving our characters. These two unrelated moments aligning together within seconds is undoubtedly extremely lucky. We cut back over to Claire's dinosaur-filled odyssey, and she's surprisingly not currently getting digested by a dinosaur. Navigating this dino-infested forest as someone who doesn't specifically have a specialty in this field like Owen would definitely be screwed. It's such a head-scratching decision writing-wise to put her in this position because Owen and Kayla end up saving her anyways. Why did we have to break up these characters? It doesn't specifically serve a function in the plot. So, prior to being saved, Claire finds this outpost, and while this ladder is lowering, some Dilophosauruses jump Claire. Her form of action here is basically just sitting down and accepting death, when there's a very clear option of going for the ladder that's a few feet in front of her, because, you know, the fundamental human condition is trying to not die. Or hell, maybe she should try to put out her hand like Owen. That seems to always work. Also, I genuinely just accepted Owen teleporting in at this moment to save Claire because you automatically know that's going to happen. The insane coincidences are so commonplace that it really breeds a sense of normalcy for how stupid this movie is. Tim Cook decides to cook the locusts since they're evidence, and while on fire, they burst through the glass ceiling. I guess this is a really big oversight because I always assume glass encasing these types of chambers are bulletproof. Maybe this billion-dollar company is cheaping out. The result of this is, as the swarm of locusts fly around while on fire, which is questionable in of itself,
That's bananas.
they start falling and creating pockets of fire. Visually, it is interesting at least. One of the falling locusts lands on the front of the car containing Ian, Alan, Ellie, and Maisie, and they crash and roll down a hill. Crazily enough, out of this entire forest, they happen to crash land right next to the outpost with Owen, Kayla, and Claire, finally paying off the 20 insanely convoluted hoops the writers jump through to have all of these characters in one scene. By far and away, one of the most forced plot points I've had the displeasure of watching. The Giganotosaurus interrupts the nostalgia trip. How dare you? I wasn't done clapping and cheering yet. This general scene is a bit weird because it's as if the Giganotosaurus was injected with a gallon of sedatives. It's aware of and is reacting to the people moving, but it's pursuing them like a snail. It feels like the creators don't care about if the scene makes sense at all and just want it to look visually cool, hitting distinct and notable shots. It's all about vibes, baby. However, that neuters any form of danger the scene has for what's supposed to be one of the deadliest dinosaurs. While climbing up the ladder, and I'll nickname the Giganotosaurus Gibby for syllable convenience, bites the cage and almost eats Maisie. Now, the amount of time it takes Gibby to get the cage out of its teeth is about 5 seconds. In that time, Owen, Claire, Alan, and Ellie are able to climb up the ladder, flat out breaking the internal reality of this movie, with the editor not showing it because Gibby would have definitely have killed them. Instead, they opt to teleport them onto the catwalk, which would still get them killed. While up there, Gibby decides to very slowly bite our characters, giving Ian enough time to get its attention with a flaming locust on a stick. Yummers. And I guess a nice subversion here at least is him harpooning the dino's throat instead of throwing it away. Dracarys. After getting inside, the Avengers are able to overcome Gibby with different strategies. What is bro doing? He's just stabbing its mouth with a pocket knife.
Had a dog once. Humped my leg so much, I got a callus on my shin bone.
Huh? So the plan is to deactivate the aerial deterrent system and steal a helicopter to escape Biosyn, while also capturing Beta before that. For additional context, Biosyn got evacuated because Tim Cook cooked the forest by starting a wildfire. He also stays behind to collect some documents and takes the Hyperloop to escape. However, later on when our characters reroute power away from the Hyperloop, that strands Tim Cook. He exits the transportation and starts walking down this tunnel, and within a minute, he runs into the pack of Dilophosauruses. Now, this death is quite frustrating in force when you compare him to, say, a character like Claire, where she travels through a location that's swarming with dinosaurs for hours, while Tim Cook immediately runs into one where there shouldn't be any. You have to go through locked doors to access this location, by the way. The writers just teleport these dinosaurs here so they can fill the checklist of killing the main villain with a dinosaur. But they do so in a way that's not at all related to the main plot. I like the death itself, solid callback to the first movie, and obviously everything surrounding it is just terrible.
Eyes on me.
Why do anything else when this simple trick solves everything? Claire and Ellie also have a side objective where they get jumped by what should be dead locusts, but I don't have enough energy to really dive into that, so let's get to the part where they turn the aerial deterrent system back online. Kayla gets the helicopter and everyone convenes in the courtyard, even including Henry. I guess we can invite you since you want to save the world from the locusts. Fine. To end the movie in the most epic way possible, we're gonna have the Giganotosaurus fight the T-Rex.
Ooh, that's how it always starts.
Even though the T-Rex submitted to Gibby the last time they met, but maybe it's starved and needs to fight Gibby over this food source. Who knows? They're just here and it's time to start clapping and cheering. What follows is a borderline incoherent mess where everyone scrambles around like headless chicken and no one gets stepped on. Gibby kills the T-Rex, and to distract the dinosaur, Kayla shoots a flare at the Therizinosaurus that manifested itself into the scene. Let's dump all the dinosaur toys onto the floor and mash them together for fun, rawr. Plot twist, the T-Rex was playing dead and gets up and rams Gibby into the claws of the other dino. Teamwork makes the dream work, and oh, the characters have already left. Alright. From here, we're basically in the epilogue, and the main thing I find funny is Owen would have a hard time bringing Beta back to the US since that's kind of illegal. You can technically make that work writing-wise, but I just find the notion of trying to bring a dinosaur through checked luggage funny.
I cannot allow that animal to board the plane.
So there you have it. The whole story revolved around Locust and Maisie, and we ended up going to an isolated location with dinosaurs anyways, just like every other film. The only scene that properly utilizes the premise of dinosaurs being out in the world was the Malta sequence, but given that was such a bad portion of the movie, maybe that's for the best. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this Devoid of Logic trilogy. My Letterboxd, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and have a good day. Thanks to my incredible top patron, Logan Farmer.